You open your eyes to sand in your mouth, blood on your hands, and a sun that feels like judgment. You're not a tourist. You're not royalty. You're a laborer in ancient Egypt, and your job is to die slowly, one stone at a time. Forget the myths. The pyramids weren't built by aliens, enlightened architects, or divine inspiration. They were built by backs, by calloused hands, broken spines, sun-scorched flesh. And your body? Just another expendable tool in a project so vast, so pointless to you, it may as well be a monument to suffering. You didn't volunteer. You were conscripted. Maybe your village was taxed in labor instead of grain. Maybe you were part of a corvée, a state-mandated workforce that called itself service but felt like slavery. Either way, you said goodbye to your family knowing you might not return. Not because of war, but because of architecture. Each day begins before sunrise. You're handed a primitive tool, a heavy load, and a shouted command. You walk for miles, barefoot, dragging limestone blocks, while overseers bark orders and crack whips. Not metaphorical whips, actual, braided, skin-tearing whips. Water? When they feel generous. Shade? A myth. The desert isn't just your environment, it's your executioner. It drains you, peels you, bleaches you from the inside out. And still, you move stone. Not for your God, not for your home, but for a tomb you'll never see from the inside. Unless you die and get thrown into its foundation. You don't build history, you fuel it with muscle, marrow, and silence. Welcome to the job site. No safety harness, no helmets, no mercy. Just endless stone, searing heat, and a hierarchy that placed your life somewhere between the sled and the sand. You're surrounded by hundreds, sometimes thousands, of men, all sweating, groaning, bleeding in unison. Some are skilled workers, masons or engineers. But you're not here for skill. You're here for weight, to pull, to haul, to obey. The tools are primitive. Copper chisels that dull quickly, ropes that fray, sledges that crush feet as easily as gravel. Every movement risks injury. Every misstep can mean a snapped tendon, a crushed limb, or worse, a fall beneath a block that no one will lift off you. You don't stop. You don't get days off. You don't complain. Not unless you want your rations cut. And speaking of rations, don't imagine banquets. You eat when they say, and what they give you is barely enough to function. A bit of bread, dried fish, beer so thick it's closer to sludge. No fruit, no rest, no privacy. You shit in a trench beside 100 other exhausted men, and sleep on the same sand you work on, if you sleep at all. If you collapse, you're removed. Not to be treated, but replaced. Someone else will take your spot before your sweat dries on the stone. You're not a worker. You're an ingredient in the pyramid, used up and discarded with the same indifference as a worn-out rope. And above it all, watching from shaded platforms, are the overseers, chosen more for cruelty than competence. They keep order with lashes, not leadership. If you fall behind, you're beaten. If you resist, you're punished. If you speak, you better be praying. No one's counting how many bodies it takes to raise a pyramid. They only count how high it stands. They didn't just work you to death, they made you thank them for it. You were told this was holy labor, that every brick you dragged up the ramp brought you closer to Ma'at, the cosmic balance. That dying under the sun was a sacred contribution to the eternal life of the Pharaoh, who, unlike you, would be mummified, entombed, remembered. They didn't give you a choice. They gave you a myth. Priests wandered the camps, chanting blessings, reminding you that this was service to the gods, that the Pharaoh was divine, that your suffering would be rewarded, not here but in the afterlife. But you knew better. You could see the bodies rotting in shallow graves behind the quarry. You could smell the cost of eternity. The pyramid wasn't for the people, it was for the powerful. A status monument for one man, built with the backs of thousands who would never be named. While you bled, he bathed. While you starved, he feasted. And when he died, he was buried with treasure. You'd be buried with dust, or not at all. And still, they told you it was glorious. They carved reliefs of happy workers. They sang songs of unity and pride. They painted murals of a nation in harmony. And yet, no one painted your crushed ribs. No scribe etched your blisters. No priest sang for the man who fell into the foundation and was simply left there. The ideology was perfect. If you suffered, you were noble. If you died, you were useful. If you questioned, you were dangerous. So you kept quiet. You believed, not because you were convinced, but because disbelief was another kind of death. The pyramid doesn't pause. There are no weekends, no harvest breaks, no time to heal. Just endless stone and endless orders, all marching to the rhythm of a nation obsessed with death, yours included. Each day begins the same. A horn at dawn, a shove in the ribs, a limp toward the quarry. If you're lucky, you woke up at all. If you're not, someone will drag your corpse from the path so the next man doesn't trip over it. And the ramp? Still there, still rising, still thirsty for blood. You work in teams, not for camaraderie, but because it's more efficient to watch each other fall. One slip, and you're crushed beneath a rolling block. One moment of exhaustion, and you're trampled by the men behind you who can't stop. Momentum matters more than life. Rain, rare. But when it comes, the ramps flood and the stones slide. Men die faster in the mud. Still the overseers scream, "Keep moving." Heatstroke, dehydration, vomiting from exhaustion. Just more symptoms of progress. And night doesn't bring rest. Only the next shift. Torches line the perimeter as the hauling continues in darkness. The pyramid's shadow grows larger, longer, heavier, even when the sun is gone. You start to believe it's alive, that it feeds on your years. You count days by bruises. You measure time in lost teeth, cracked nail, missing friends. You forget what your village looks like. You forget your children's names. You forget there was ever a world without stone and shouting. This wasn't a project. It was a machine that ran on sweat, silence, and the dead. By the second month, your hands no longer feel like yours. The calluses are so thick they crack open when dry. Your shoulders throb, your knees grind. You bleed from places that shouldn't bleed, and no one notices, because everyone else is bleeding too. Your spine curves from the weight. Your skin blisters under the sun. Your eyes sting from the dust, and you cough stone like it's part of your lungs now. You dream of water and wake up with sand in your mouth. Your teeth loosen, your gums rot, and that persistent headache? That's the sound of your brain shrinking from dehydration. But worse than the body is the mind. You start forgetting words, forgetting memories. You hear phantom orders in your sleep and wake up working. You see the pyramid even when you close your eyes. It follows you, not as a monument, but as a presence, vast, cold, indifferent. You start to believe it knows your name and has plans for it. You laugh at nothing, cry at nothing. You stop speaking. What's there to say? You see others lose their grip. Some wander off into the desert. Some sit down and never get back up. Some throw themselves beneath the blocks. And no one stops them. Why would they? One less mouth to feed. One less voice to silence. You didn't come here to die. But now that you're here, you realize you weren't meant to live either. Not fully, not freely. Just long enough to move the stone and then disappear. The Pharaoh gets a monument. You get chronic pain and a memory no one records. And by the time your body gives out, the worst part is you're grateful. And then it ends. Not the construction. The pyramid keeps rising, stone after stone, like a promise that can't be broken. No. You end. Quietly. In the sand. Bent and hollow. Maybe you collapsed hauling a final block. Maybe your lungs gave out mid-chant. Maybe you just stopped, sat down beneath the ramp, and refused to get up. The body can only break so many times, and yours has shattered in places no healer knows how to touch. There is no ceremony, no mourning. Your name was never carved. Your birth was never logged. The foreman makes a mark on a clay tablet. One less laborer, one more loss. A replacement is already on the way. From another village, another forgotten mother, another debt to pay with flesh. They bury you in the sand behind the quarry, or maybe beneath the pyramid itself, in one of those hidden gaps in the foundation where the stones don't quite fit. You become part of the structure, quite literally. Your bones absorb the weight of history. Not remembered, absorbed, functional, permanent, anonymous. And the work continues. The sun rises the next day, just as cruel. The chants resume. The stones move. The dust lifts. And your death is folded into the rhythm of it all, like a note in a song no one hears anymore. No one visits your grave. No one speaks your story. No one writes legends about the builder who died in the name of glory he never touched. Thousands more will follow, each step of the pyramid layered in sweat, blood, and absence. Each line of hieroglyphics carved above the bones of those who could not write. The Pharaoh will rest beneath gold. You will rest beneath dust. Centuries later, travelers will marvel at what you built. They'll photograph it, paint it, praise it, call it a wonder of the world. And maybe, just maybe, they'll ask how it was made. But the answer won't come, because you're long gone, because no one listens to stones, because the pyramid still stands, and you don't.